The reality is, or at least the way we believe it at Tremor, is that social media is not about the technology. The technology is a phenomenal thing. Please do not misread me. Technology really helps to facilitate that social networking which we all want to encourage, which has been going on for the longest period of time. What social media really needs to focus against is it not about the medium, but rather about what do people do? What are they using the medium for? So as you think about social media, we like to think about it as more from a standpoint of how do we facilitate what people do and want to do rather than focusing on the bling of the medium. We focus in on understanding cognitive principles of why people talk based on how consumers or how people in general think. It's actually all wired in our DNA. The brain works in a series of what's called schemas. Okay? Basically, a schema is a strand of thoughts that puts together or creates a mental model for a consumer or for anybody. So think about it. By putting together multiple strings of ideas together, you can make sense of anything in the world. Two ways of really getting consumers to talk. We actually talk about one of interrupting a schema. The other way is actually to go all of a sudden create a conceptual blend. Conceptual blends are, let me go back, are an interesting, it's when you take two separate thoughts, mesh them together to create a whole new idea that never existed before. Okay. Conceptual blends. This is actually my favorite. You smash two things together that actually never were thought together, it creates an incredible scenario. Why was the iPhone such an incredible piece of technology? Well, the reality of the iPhone was it didn't do anything all that special. It was a phone, it was a computer. We had those technologies, but it smashed the two together to create an entertainment system, a fully integrated entertainment system where you can do so many things with it. That's never been done before. You mean I can have all this stuff together in a simple little handheld device? It wasn't that the technology was so cool. It is very cool, by the way. But it wasn't about the technology being so cool, because there are technological advances all the time. We know that. We see it all every single day, the advancement technologies. It's the fact that we blended two different objects, two different separate entities, combined them together into one piece that made it so disruptive, that made it so engaging, that made it so talkable. Conceptual blends are a very important part of disruption. We've been doing things backwards for a little bit of time now. We start off with what is so buzzworthy. And I hear this all the time. We got to create buzz, right? And that's what we start off. So let's create a tactic that is really cool, it's engaging, it's fantastic, it stops people, right? Because we're going to disrupt their equilibrium. The problem is, if it's not based off what the essence of the brand is about, what have you invariably done? You've not created actually consumer advocacy. All you've created is buzz about something that the brand may not necessarily stand behind. We don't necessarily believe in influencers, okay? What we're different about is we believe that peers are not necessarily influencers as much as they're credible resources of information. So I talked to Sarah, she's very, very knowledgeable. She gives me a piece of information. I believe her because she's a credible resource. Does she influence me? Yes, because of the information she told me. But if Sarah were to tell me that Las Vegas were family friendly, she wouldn't influence me at all. So just because I take her as an individual who can influence me, it doesn't make her an influencer. She's a carrier. She's a carrier of a message. The message has to be very influential. The message has to be credible. She has to be credible for the message to also be credible. We've actually broken consumers into 5 different buckets. 5 different buckets from how they like to network, how they like to communicate, everything from things like we call them communication enthusiasts, people pleasers, independent extroverts, interested introverts, and uninterested bystanders. Net of it all is these 5 consumer segments, these 5 behavioral segments, help you understand how people use different things.